Tonight on the Anime Club, we have Seki, very clearly ready to rant, it looks like.
Well, okay, so we're talking about storylines and theming of Maid-Sama, and as I really equate this in my mind with Ouran, High School Host Club. I feel like I should finish that title sometimes. But I generally think that's a pretty apt comparison. So they're both shoujos, and they both had a pretty limited run. I mean, they're both about one season, 24 to 26 episodes. They came out in the same span of 5 years, and they generally target the exact same audience, pretty much. They're both, a person in high school, girl and boy. One has a secret. The school can't find out, et cetera, et cetera. And there's money problems on the parts of both female characters with secrets. And, so spoilers, obviously, for, Maid-Sama, but I don't know if this happens in the first 13 episodes because I watched beyond that, but I know Usui is not poor.
Yeah, no, he's
not. Oh, yeah, it's very clear he's not poor from one particular episode.
Okay, I'm just making sure that was one of the episodes we watched because they blend together for me.
The one where they're stalking him?
Yeah. So this, to me, this show is then really interesting to me because Ouran does a similar thing where every episode is kind of on a different topic. But I think in the case of Maid-Sama, it's more disjointed. I think it's made even later, so I would think that it would have gotten better in terms of keeping like a consistent plot and storyline and blending the episodes kind of together. Even if you're doing episode of the week, you can still do it in a way that's palatable and enjoyable to watch, in my opinion. Ouran was, and Ouran didn't really have any two-part specials. If anything, it only had maybe one two-part special in the whole series. And their mangas are relatively similar. So I think that's one of my big problems with the theming and storyline in this show, right? Like, nostalgia. I love this show. Like, I really do, but it's so incohesive from episode to episode. And not just in the fact that each episode is covering a different topic, because you could still blend it together even if it was. It's more in the characters that can be incohesive from episode to episode. Because I feel like a lot of times there's like off-screen development characters that we have to kind of infer in between episodes, or there's things they just don't have time to say, or they don't adequately communicate in the 20-ish minutes that you have that are then just incorporated into the next time that character appears.
So here's the interesting thing, actually. The manga for both Ouran and Kaichou are only actually 2 years apart from each other.
Yep. Yeah.
So that actually makes a bit more sense why it doesn't really develop more over the course of Ouran's introduction. But it seems like, I guess, Ouran's author just had a bit better story structure going for its...
Well, I think another big thing with Ouran is in Ouran, there's a slightly larger main cast and less minor cast members.
Yeah.
Than there are in Maid.
Whereas there's very few.
Yeah, here, so you've basically got Usui and President, and everyone else is basically a cycling minor character from episode to episode. Mm-hmm. But in Ouran, you have the whole club, and they are the main characters with then other people coming in and out.
I think, because I can palette shows that are very, like, event of the week. I do watch my fair share of anime. It's not the first time I've seen that structure. I just feel like some of the events in there especially are just kind of boring or kind of annoying. Like, what was it? My two least favorite episodes for sure are the Cram School, which, oh my God, that got on my nerves.
Wait, there's a Cram School?
Yeah,
the Cram School kid, the 6 kids, the 5 or 6 kids.
The quintuplets?
Yeah, they all look the same. They all followed around the president or whatever.
Yeah, they called themselves the Cram School fan club.
And I'm glad they only ever show up like twice.
Yeah,
but my God, did it make that episode unbearable?
Have characters that aren't ever really developed behind the one trait that they have to show for that specific episode. Mm-hmm. But then if they come back, they're somehow more developed. And because some of these events in the manga obviously take a lot longer, and it isn't necessarily as of the week in the manga because the manga is longer. Same thing with Ouran. In Ouran, a lot of the episodes are more developed in the manga, but you have to shorten it, obviously, when you're going into the TV show being so short. And I think that's the biggest failing, in my opinion, of the storylines of this show, is that the characters don't transition from every episode perfectly.
And then I guess at the other episode that like I absolutely couldn't stand was Momotaro. I don't remember which episode that was, but when they retold Momotaro with the cast, oh god, that was
episode
boring.
9. That episode was 9. It was so awful.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go ahead and get into this. I'm not going to touch into it because it actually does touch on my favorite character of the series. What disappointed me, and this is where I started to not really like the show as much, is they showed this character for one episode. I really liked them. I thought they were a great character, and I just never see anything from them again.
Which one?
I'm not gonna because they're my favorite character.
We'll get into it.
We'll get into it in characters.
See, my personal least favorite episode was actually Net Idol Aoi.
Yes!
And do you know why that was my least favorite episode?
Wait, what? Wait, why? Okay, actually, go ahead.
Yeah.
So it was my least favorite episode because in the ending, there's nothing's really, like, nothing comes of the episode. This episode accomplishes nothing in universe, nothing in the timeline, nothing even for any of the characters, really, because Aoi just reverts at the end of the episode.
And then Aoi never appears again until like the last episode.
Yeah, it's frustrating because I don't know. Part of this is obviously colored by my knowledge of the manga and the fact that I know that characters get more, but that's like the biggest example of where a character is just not transitioned well in and out of an episode. Like, they just did that character so dirty. It was really unfortunate too.
I think I'd have preferred it if they tried to stick a little bit more to the maid cafe in general. Because despite it being like the token, like not the token, the entire premise of the series is her trying to keep her secret, that doesn't really come up all that often, and it's mostly just a background thing.
Yeah.
I will
to
say
get a maid on the cover of the art.
Yeah, I will say one of my favorite parts of the series is when she's doing her job as president and she's confronted for being unfair in some way, and she has to come to terms with that. Because it happens a few times where like they actually do come to her and they're like, well, you are being unfair. Like, you're favoring the girls or something and you're not listening to our opinions, etc.
I would agree with you if it weren't for the fact that if you're looking at their demands, she's not. In fact, often their demands
Are ridiculous.
stretched ridiculous, and this is going to be a problem I'll speak more on in the character section. Some of them came out to downright sexual harassment, so a little bit uncomfortable.
I think for me, obviously the issue there is that obviously some of their demands are ridiculous, but she doesn't really understand the phrase compromise. She's just like, no, we're going with their idea because none of yours are acceptable and I won't even entertain any part of them. So I do want to touch on that in characters because I think that's more to do with the fact that the phrase compromise seems not a part of her vocabulary. But yeah, and then in terms of actual themes, I mean, it's kind of hard to find any because every episode is kind of so different that nothing really sticks around for super long.
I don't necessarily need it to have crazy themes, though. Like, I love myself a thematic masterpiece, of course, but a show like this, I can totally see it not needing crazy, like, overarching themes.
Yeah,
like,
this
character arc themes, which is where you could probably pull from, work well enough. I just think the writing on those characters was kind of weak.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the show doesn't need strong themes at all because it is very much like this is something that you would watch on TV every Saturday morning in a slot between two other shows you were interested in. That's my firm opinion on it. Like, this is the show that you'd put in between One Piece and Fairy Tail, and I'd just stick around to watch it, and enjoy it for what it is in between One Piece and Fairy Tail. But I wouldn't necessarily tune into it specifically every Saturday morning or anything after a few episodes, which is kind of unfortunate because, like I said, nostalgia. I do really enjoy this show, but it doesn't have great rewatchability in a short-term time span. If you're looking for something to just watch an episode of every time that you just want to watch some anime that's uncomplicated, you don't want to get into complex storylines or anything that you have to think about, this is a brain numb anime. Like, you turn this on when you don't want to analyze Demon Slayer.
Well, I mean, I don't think every anime needs to be peak. What was it the kids say these days? Peak Kino.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. I don't know. I feel like the show fails at even being a like your typical. I feel like it fails even on its level as a pretty lighthearted rom-com.
See, I don't feel that way. I think for me, it's funny enough, with enough bits of kind of like comedy mixed with a little bit of drama, and I see the romance, and for me, it's funny enough. I enjoy it. But I think I've probably watched a lot more rom-coms than you. I'd bet, just in general, because I tend to watch rom-coms a lot, especially when I first started watching anime.
I tend to watch at least one rom-com a season of varying different tones.
Well, no,
some more on romance, some more on comedy.
Well, but I mean, when I started watching anime, I kind of went all out and watched like a ton of rom-coms. It was the only thing I was watching before I found One Piece, and Naruto and Fairy Tail and all the shonens. But I've seen a lot of the older ones, right? Like pre-2012. I don't generally watch a lot of rom-coms now because I find that romance kind of cringy at the best of times, which is just a thing in anime. Romance is very often incredibly cringy, and sometimes not well executed. I wasn't sure I was a fan of this whole like. I'm not sure if I'm a fan of like the romance between her and Takumi all that much.
Oh, I hate it, but that's going to get into characters,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. I think we're starting to lean into characters unless any of us have.
Before we go, does anyone have any particular episodes they wanted to bring up? Any particular events of the week that they hated or loved?
No, I want to ask you a question. What the heck was that word, and what the heck did it mean?
What?
The
Kino?
Pikino, yeah.
Oh, it's something I'd actually been seeing around. I had to look it up. It's like, what the hell does this mean? It means like a masterpiece, like chef's kiss, like, oh my god, like you stick on your pinkies out, sip tea. This was a fine masterpiece.
I'm actually pretty sure pinky straight out is actually insulting. It's supposed to be curled slightly, like slightly curled like that.
It's basically a way of saying the show is for the upper. Like you could not understand this show; it is too deep for you, kind of thing.
It's basically like it's a cultured show, but it's not hentai cultured. It's actually cultured.
Like, a way to say cultured show without having to implicate like culture.
Yeah.
Before we get into it, so I will say, I did actually like the Netchan Aoi title, but not for the episode that it was, but I liked Aoi's character. So we'll get into that when we get into characters.
Yes.
All right. Well, everyone, try harder. Come back in a couple days. We're going to be talking about characters on the Anime
Or it could
Club.
be a week, depending on how well Seki does in editing.
Or how she schedules it.
Look, you
See you next time.
Fine
Subscribe to our
line.
Patreon.
Fine line.